Hey, happy Monday afternoon. Dr. Alan Christensen here with you for Office Hours Live. Good to connect. So, if you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new, this is Office Hours. If you had a professor or teacher, college or high school that would encourage you to office hours, think of it as that. This is a time where we can connect in person, cover your questions in some good detail. And detail's the name of the game. I'd love to go into topics in more depth than you would find otherwise. You can Google anything nowadays, but how does that really apply to your specific circumstances, right? So that's what's fun about this. We can make things apply a lot better to your circumstances. I'd love to start with a couple points to discuss and a couple of good questions I've received since the last office hours. And if I see some ones that might be pertinent that pop up here live, I'll grab those as well. So if you've got a good question about thyroid health, hormones, body weight, diet, things along those lines, put them in there. And if I have some useful input, I'll take a go at it and hang out because I almost always have follow-up questions. And that's where it gets really interesting. We can make this apply to you much more specifically. I'm with you guys on a couple platforms right now. We are on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, and we're on Twitter. So that's really cool. A couple things going on, like generalized housekeeping. We're sharing a brand new line of customized thyroid supplements. Such a thing has never existed before. When working on the manuscript for the thyroid reset diet, I came across so many studies about how various micronutrients could improve thyroid function. And I was blown away. There's a lot of really good quality human double-blind placebo-controlled trials using safe micronutrients. And I just kept getting stymied about why has nothing been done with this. And I was just going to make a few chapters in the book, but even if I did, there really weren't solutions available based upon that. So the book became the book and the rest became thyroid-specific formulations. Now, I mention that because there's a series of webinars going on right now, and these are free. I did an introductory one last week. That was an overview about all of the new products. Starting tomorrow, I'll do one a week for the next 8 weeks. And with these, I'll talk about the products. It's really about the solutions. So tomorrow's is going to be about weight loss, and it's really about how to lose weight if you've got thyroid disease. Why is it stuck? What are the solutions? I'll talk about how supplements can be part of that, but it'll be about the broader question about weight loss overall. And the following weeks will be other similar topics. We'll talk about regaining energy, correcting iron levels, reducing antibodies, helping with nodules, reversing hyperthyroidism. And it's going to be really about the solution, how supplements fit into that, but really all aspects of that. Medications, your lifestyle, the big things that tend to get missed. So that's what's queued up. And those will start off tomorrow, and they are free. I'll be sure there's links available on all these platforms. So stay tuned and love to see you all there. Now, with those, you can attend in a lot of ways. We'll do these live on Zoom and Facebook. They won't be on Instagram, but on Instagram, you can see the links on how to access. And if you do come on Zoom, we'll be on a video chat. And I'll cover the topic for 30, 45 minutes, and I'll keep some time at the end of that for covering real-time questions. And in Zoom video chat, we're talking in video chat, so it's really cool. Those will be ported and played on Facebook, and I'll keep an eye on Facebook for that. But Zoom is where you can get the most direct access. So all options are great. I'm seeing a lot of friends jump on. Hey, Joanne, happy Monday to you too. Julie's here. Looking forward to hearing your expertise. Thank you, Julie. I better not say anything dumb or I'll disappoint Julie today. Well, the day's still young. Yeah, so seeing others jump on, seeing some good questions come in. Welcome, you guys. Welcome, welcome, welcome. One point I wanted to mention real quick, because this came up a bunch of times. So a really good question came in, and I want to read this question to you and share a bit of the answer and share my thought process around that. So I'll not go through the entire thing, but the gist of the question was, this is from Rebecca recently, and she's in our personalized thyroid plan. We'll announce an opening of this again sometime soon. This is an online program that's basically an automated way by which you can get guidance to reverse thyroid disease and no longer need thyroid medication. So Rebecca, excited to see your thyroid nodule control supplement. I've been trying to shrink a large one since its discovery in 2019, talking with different things she's tried. She's currently on the thyroid reset diet, and they've helped stop the malignancy and stop the growth, which has been good. But she's not yet had the nodule shrink significantly. She does get a yearly ultrasound. Her question is this: if we're supposed to stay away from spirulina regarding the thyroid reset diet, how come the main ingredient in nodule control is spirulina? How exactly does that work? Thank you for all you do. Well, Rebecca, good question. Now, here's the thing. When I saw this study, I knew this was going to create confusion, and I did my best to clarify, but my best apparently wasn't enough because, Rebecca, you're not the only one to ask about this possible discrepancy. So yeah, let's dive into this. If you're with me on Facebook or YouTube, you'll see some images. I'm going to pop these up here. So, and now just a quick answer, it's not really a discrepancy because if you look really close in the thyroid reset diet, and I think I had the actual page readily available, page 141. So spirulina, so sea vegetables were all yellow light foods. Now, quick context for everyone who's not yet read the thyroid reset diet. The cliff notes of it are foods are broken down to green light, yellow light, and red light. And those wishing to reverse thyroid disease are guided to eat from the green light list exclusively. It's a pretty dang long list, so you're not going to go hungry, I promise you that. And doing so, there's many clinical studies showing that just this dietary change has been documented to reverse thyroid disease, full on reverse, 80% of the time in people who've had bad versions of it for many years. And if you look at those, and the problem is that the 20% that didn't get better, a lot of them got better, but the disease wasn't totally reversed within the 3 months, or they weren't compliant. But if you look at those that did follow the guidelines, 97% had radical improvements. And of that group, many saw full reversals, but those that didn't still saw big improvements besides the 3%. So pretty dang effective. So yeah, so the reset thing is just doing the green light foods. Once you've healed your thyroid and you want to just keep it there, you've got the option of adding in up to 2 servings of yellow light foods per day. And these are just lowest in iodine, some iodine, and the red light foods have enough to where they could be a risk at any stage, so better all to avoid. Now, sea vegetables in general were way, way red light, like as red light as you can get, right? With the exception of spirulina and chlorella. Now, to be really precise, they're not sea vegetables. They grow more so in freshwater, at least spirulina does. I could be wrong on chlorella, so I'm not going to go on that. But spirulina primarily grows in freshwater. And it's not iodine free. It does have some, but the amount that it has per serving, and considering typical serving sizes, I called it a green light food when it's below 3,000 milligrams in total serving size per day. And that's a pretty fair amount of spirulina. Now, it would be easier to just paint with a broad stroke and say just avoid it, but honestly, it's the amount that it'll have at a serving that high is probably around 7 micrograms. And I did a lot of analysis to see that spirulina was consistent in that. Some foods could have a lot of iodine sometimes and a little bit other times. And in those cases, I didn't take chances. I often just put them in the red light list anyway. But no, it was pretty consistent. So if you're taking reasonable amounts of it, you will not get too much. And the reason I wanted to include it was because of its strong evidence for helping thyroid nodules. So here was my motivation. This was a clinical trial. This was from just a couple years ago. And the title was The Treatment for Benign Thyroid Nodules with a Combination of Natural Extracts. And in the study, I'm going to look at it directly. This one had taken a group of people, there were 34 people that had thyroid nodules. They had also had fine needle aspirates of their nodules. They've been biopsied. And this was a 12-week trial. And in the study, they were given a combination of micronutrients, which included spirulina, curcumin, and boswellia. And what they saw was basically a really marked reduction of the nodules. So what I'm showing here is that there was really no patients that saw a marked increase. Small numbers saw unchanged. But we look over here and what we see is that many saw a very dramatic increase. And overall, average decrease in size, let me get those details again. Yeah, there was decreases of sizes that were 50% or greater over the course of a rather short time frame, a 12-week time frame. And the conclusions they said was that this combination was effective at reducing the size of benign thyroid nodules. So spirulina, boswellia, curcumin is what they used in this trial. And nodule control, one of the new thyroid-specific formulations, shows those ingredients for that very reason. They've been clinically shown in a placebo-controlled human study to document the regression of thyroid nodules. Now, those weren't the only ingredients in nodule control. there were a few other clinical trials on other micronutrients, and I included those as well. But yeah, quite simply, you would get the spirulina in that mixture because it was been shown to work. And I understand that I heightened the concern about avoiding iodine, rightfully so, but spirulina is safe that way. So yeah, this is a cool thing. And you know, there's a lot of documentation about this combination of micronutrients not only shrinking the nodules, but going further to cut the risk of nodules progressing. Rebecca mentioned that hers were now non-cancerous, so that's good, but the concern is that they can change over time. So the combination of these micronutrients cuts the risk of these nodules converting and becoming cancerous over time, and also helps their odds of shrinking. So with whatever else has been done, this can be a good addition. There's also some data arguing that nodules are influenced by insulin levels. And in a lot of cases, insulin's a proxy for overall cell growth. If our body is growing, that often correlates with unhealthy stuff growing as well, like nodules. So for many, if weight loss is an appropriate solution, weight loss can also cause weight loss in the nodules, surprisingly enough. All right, so that was that one. I'm going to grab a few questions and let me just, I had one more image related to this. I'm sorry. Yep, just a quick one. This was some interesting mechanics of how it was thought all this works. And this was proposed by those who had written the paper. They chose these micronutrients. They felt that the combination had effects upon benefiting micronutrient metabolism, the formation of superoxide dismutase in the thyroid as well. So the thyroid is one of the densest areas of free radical generation in the body. Like nowhere else is there as many free radicals as there are per tissue mass as there is within the thyroid. So the thyroid has to make a lot of internal antioxidants to manage that. The two big ones include superoxide dismutase and also glutathione peroxidase. And the antioxidants come because the thyroid is handling iodine. It's converting iodide, which is safer, into iodine. And iodine is hot potato. It's a dangerous thing. And the normal processing of it is the cause of most thyroid pathology and related to nodule formation. So that makes it just blatantly obvious why iodine regulation is like step one, but also antioxidant support and management is critical. So these researchers chose this blend for its effects upon the gut and its effects in reducing oxidative stress and improving superoxide dismutase formation. Okay, so enough of those images. That was that. Yeah, great question, Rebecca. The blend is fine. It's well within the context of a low iodine diet. Now, in some situations, I've seen spirulina used as a protein source and used in much higher amounts. And it does contain protein, but it's honestly not an efficient source of protein in terms of just how much of it you would need to consume to meet your day's protein needs. And that's where people consume it in doses of well in excess of 3,000 milligrams per day. So using it as a micronutrient, antioxidant, totally fine. Using it as a main source of protein, you would get exposed to way too much iodine, and it's very not cost effective. And you'd actually get too high on some micronutrients by doing so. So that was the little distinction there. All right. Lots of good comments coming in. I just saw one. This is cutting out. Is this just me? I appear to have good connection. If there are other issues, if anyone wants to clarify Bonnie's experience, I'll see if I can do anything. But otherwise, that maybe on your end, Bonnie, if you want to restart and come back and see if that helps. So lots of really good questions coming in here. I've got to grab a few of these and pick and choose. Elena Truth Music. That's a cool last name. That's a really cool last name. I'm not sure if that's your last name. If it is, that's awesome. If it's a username, it's a clever one, Truth Music. I'm struggling to communicate your study/position to my functional medicine doctor who keeps touting importance of iodine supplementation and kelp as a great thyroid food. Thank you for your constant guidance. Yeah, Elena, this is a good question. There's the idea of iodine as the body needing more. It's something that it's intuitive. It's easy to think that micronutrients make the thyroid stronger or make the body stronger. And the truth is that a lack of essential micronutrients makes the body weak, makes things not work. It's totally true. Your car has no gas, your car won't move. Uh, Elena, I don't know if you've heard me use this analogy before or not, but it may be useful. Micronutrients are more like keys to the car. If they're not there, the car won't work. But once you've got your keys, if the car doesn't work, more keys won't help. And this is a case to where there's a really strong inverse J-shaped curve, they call that, meaning that if the disease is up and the iodine level is out, that too little iodine is bad, but too much iodine is bad in the same ways. And this is because iodine is so aggressively concentrated. You need more than your blood carries, so you pump it inside the thyroid. Now, the good thing about that is if you're in an environment in which there's little specks that enter into your body, you'll do fine. But if you get a lot, you have to be able to stop that, or else you would form too much thyroid hormone. And too much thyroid hormone is lethal. It makes your heart stop working. So your body's safety mechanism is just like a fuse to a fuse box. If you get too much current in your house, you blow a fuse rather than burn down your house. And if you get too much iodine in your body, you shut off your thyroid. Now, the problem is some people can't turn it back on very well, and other people, that little bit too much lapses them into thyroid disease. And there's pretty much no one to where one time a little too much would ruin them. But what we now know is that many people are chronically exposed to too much. And those who are sensitive to that are the ones that go on to get thyroid disease. So yeah, Elena, maybe the key analogy could help, or a Socratic method could help. If you could just ask for references, ask for citations. And oftentimes, once someone starts digging around, they realize that, oh, wow, this is just a game of telephone that we've been playing, that doctors tell each other this, but there's not really a basis for that. If the doctor would just if you ask them for some citations about how much they need, or about when iodine deficiency really did cause problems, when was that and what's happening currently. So the funny thing with that one is that it has been a problem globally for sure. And in the US, we started fortifying our salt with iodine to reverse that. And it reversed the problem of pediatric goiter, but in doing so, it caused the problem of adult, mostly female adult, autoimmune disease. In fact, in a pre versus post fortification of iodized salt, the rate of Hashimoto's disease amongst women 30s, 40s went up 26-fold. So 26,000%, 26 times. Yeah, it was a clear, and we've seen the exact same thing everywhere else they fortified their salt with iodine. So I could go on a rant about this for a long time, but Elena, if you've read the book, if not, I put so much into this about the mechanisms by which this happens, the proof of this happening through epidemiology, like the fortification studies in countries, and also clinical trials. There's been many clinical trials when people have been given varying doses of iodine, and we see that above a low threshold, many are lapsed into thyroid disease. But the most exciting part of the whole story is the fact that it's reversible. If it ended with this causes it, well, it'd be good to know, good to help others in the future. But the cool part is that it's reversible. We've got such documentation about minimizing iodine, reversing existing disease. So it's more than just, here's why things went wrong. Oh, well, it's more so you can do something about it. So yeah, thank you for that. Let me grab a few things from Instagram here too. Hey, Holly's here with us. Matcha Lava, Terra Shrink. Lots of folks I've seen before and some new ones. Good to see you guys. I see one already. One question I want to grab from Instagram. I'm just catching up with my waves here really quickly. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, okay. So one that I saw, I'm going to scroll back to. And, oh, here's one I should hit really directly. If I gargled with iodine salt water by mistake for dental procedures, did I hurt myself, or how long to get that out of my system for a den? Yeah, great question. So, and this is the thing, is that iodine absorbs any way you imagine. It does absorb across the skin membranes. It absorbs across external intact skin, not just mucous membranes like the mouth. We even breathe it in, believe it or not. So if you're in an area where there's a lot of iodine in the air, you breathe it into your system. So gargling with iodized salt. So if you want to give me more details, Newland Fran, I would guess you'd use 1 or 2 teaspoons of salt. And so that's going to yield about typical iodized salt, about 1,000 micrograms of iodine. That's convenient for easy math. And if you gargled, probably a minute or so that would be enough to absorb that. And let's say that you would have absorbed the typical concentrations of that. So the passage of iodine across mucous membranes, healthy, intact mucous membranes that aren't cut or damaged or infected, is somewhere around 4 to 10%. 10% would be on the high end. We'll use that also for easy math. That's going to net you about 100 micrograms of iodine into your system. For a single dose, it could be you could have had things that were a lot more catastrophic than that. Overall, those seeking to reverse thyroid disease get their best results and they're staying below 100 micrograms of their total day's intake. Those who are prone to thyroid disease but are stable, they can safely tolerate up to about 200 micrograms per day, no problem. So in the context of all things, I don't think you would have set yourself back too badly. No big worries about that. Future use, yeah, just any non-iodized salt you could use just fine for a gargle. Newland Fran, if it's worth it, I had a root canal last week and I did some saltwater gargles myself. And I have the diamond kosher salt is the main one I use for stuff like that. I've bought that stuff before online and I've got it. It comes in the cases that way. So we got so flipping much of that. If you need some, I'll give you some. We have like boxes and boxes and boxes of it. So I don't mind using that pretty liberally for things like gargling or whatnot because we got tons of it. Let's see. Oh, Francesca. Hey, Francesca. Good to see you. Hope you're well. Have you heard of any issues related to people getting the COVID vaccine? People getting the COVID vaccine to people who have thyroid issues, Hashimoto's. Issues related, for sure. So lots of talk, lots of thought about this. And to date, what we've seen is that the infection itself has been shown to really precipitate a thing called subacute thyroiditis. So the COVID infection can cause an inflammatory response within the thyroid. Interestingly, that's not been more pronounced in those with existing thyroid disease, but those that don't have it. And in many cases, it's self-limiting. It's not a long-term lasting autoimmune. The clinical trials, in autoimmune disease in general, there are also several papers showing that the infection, so not the vaccine per se, but the infection has shown higher rates of other autoimmune diseases. So people that don't have them, they can develop them. That's been true for rheumatoid arthritis and I believe also scleroderma. It's also been shown to flare existing autoimmune diseases. So getting COVID can worsen those. The last big study on the vaccine and autoimmune diseases was probably about 2 months ago. And so far, no clear trends of that initiating autoimmune disease or worsening existing disease. So good question though. So here's one from Anna. Anna's with us on YouTube. Anna, I'm just going to highlight this real quick. So it shows, there we go. Is it possible to have thyroiditis that doesn't show up in bloods? I have had TSH issues. I ask in that I am 59, have no eyebrows, and have significant receding hairline for past 12 years. So Anna, I'll give some generalized answers about your question. If you want to give more details about your specific findings, I'd be happy to give more precise comments on that. But so thyroid disease, okay. And I just saw a follow-up comment from you, Anna. I live in Australia. Is it possible to have a telehealth appointment with you? Because I couldn't include everything in my question and it's more complicated. Anna, it is. So thyroid, let me get the correct URL for that. This is a really fun thing. And I'll be kicking these off again really soon. That's it. I forget my websites. I'm sorry about that. So Thyroid Opinion, thyroidopinion.com, common spelling of both. Yeah, and these are, to be precise, I'm not a prescriber in these consultations, but I'm happy to review data, give detailed recommendations, give guidance for your team, give some good summary information. And these are one-on-one. This is like all the depth I can offer and full-on guidance. And it doesn't matter where you live. So Australia is totally fine. So you're welcome to that, Anna. Thyroidopinion.com. I think it's March. I've opened up a few more of those. I'll probably do those for a couple months and then take the summer off. I had stopped those over the winter because I'm finishing up another manuscript right now, but happy to talk more in detail. Just briefly. Okay, so I'm hearing it is cutting. So thank you guys for saying that I'm not cutting out. I'm glad to hear that. But briefly, you wouldn't have the disease too badly without there being some change in TSH. So your TSH could be well within normal and things could be wrong, but it's got to at least be not optimal, or else it could be some other factors. So there can be autoimmune disease before the TSH changes. So those things can happen, and those things can affect symptoms as well. So yeah, happy to talk to you more in detail in person about that. So here's a great one. I'm gonna also, something I try to do is stay on topic threads as much as possible so we get more depth in those topics. So a few follow-up comments. Emily said that I took Boswellia and found it completely got rid of my nodule. Emily, that's really cool news. And that was one of the reasons I included Boswellia in the nodule control, because there's good data about it helping with that. It's kind of a cool thing. So it's a tree resin. It's actually frankincense, like from the biblical story. And it's something that it's a gum. It's like a blood from a pine tree, a version of that. And it helps to make some membranes more permeable. So it better helps blood flow through areas that have limited blood supply, such as nodules or cysts. And yeah, it's a good part of that formulation. Lots of good comments and questions. So I'm just scanning here, and I'm trying to choose ones that would be most reflective for most people. Newland Fran, can't wait to get the vitamins. Thank you so much for that. We're really excited to have these things available, and I think they're going to be really helpful for people. Looking forward to tomorrow's webinar. Thank you, Kelly. I am too. We'll go in real good depth about all things weight and metabolism. Oh, Kelly, thank you for the feedback about the book. Okay, so here's another one that I'd love to clarify for you guys. This is also from Newland Fran. Talk a little more about sodium milligram on canned goods. If it has 500 milligrams per serving, it's okay. As I understand, we should only have in the green. Yeah. So no, you're totally right about that. So sodium in food. So I talk about iodine and salt and doing low iodine salts. My two favorites are Diamond brand cooking salt, which the ingredient is sodium chloride, just salt. There's nothing else in it. And then Malden's finishing salt. It's a flaked sea salt, which is I've looked at many assays. It's very low in iodine. Great stuff in the kitchen. So the question that comes up, cool, I got that. I'll use those for cooking. I'll use those at home. But I do buy foods that have salt in them, and I don't know what kind of salt they use. How worried do I have to be about that? That's a really good question. So, canned beans, we get condiments. We can't make everything from scratch completely. You could, I suppose, but mustard. I made burgers a couple days ago. We used some mustard and relish. It's okay. I made good burgers. I made my bread from scratch and all, but no, condiments are fine. So the thought about that is the amount of iodine and salt really matters when we're talking about the salt you use for day-to-day cooking. Because in those cases, you easily get a teaspoon per day, which is about 2,500 milligrams. Now, I did math on the worst offenders of iodine and salt, and how much would that be if it was the amount of salt you would get in common pre-made foods. And what I found is that if you're below a threshold of 500 milligrams, the amount you would get, worst case scenarios, are not going to be relevant. So that's rule of thumb. If we're talking about pre-made canned beans and the sodium content is 100 milligrams per serving, whatever, don't stress about that. If you're not sure what kind of salt they use, it wouldn't matter. Ideally, anything you're getting like that are going to be things that are minimally processed, low ingredient lists. But yeah, please don't worry about salt as an ingredient when the food is giving you less than 500 milligrams per serving. So hopefully that is useful. Danita has one for us, and this is a really important one. I'm going to share a link to Danita. I'm not sure if you've seen this blog already or not. If you haven't, I think you might find it really helpful. But this is a big thing is hair loss, and that's one of the real tragedies about thyroid disease. So the thyroid controls darn near everything. I'm going to drop this into our chat. This is going to be visible on Facebook and YouTube. Here's a link to a blog that I wrote about hair loss. And so it's important unto itself, but not just that, it's a marker of how well the body is repairing connective tissues. And so the question was about, this has been my most frustrating symptom. Ever since my thyroid was removed 6 years ago, my hair has drastically changed. Can anything help this? So several thoughts that come up, one of which is that taking thyroid, which you'd have to be taking it if your gland was removed, and you need that, taking it you can get the effects of your body's own output, but it doesn't always come easily. And many who are on medication, whether they're making some or none, they find that it's not quite the same as when their body did it by themselves. And that's part of what you're experiencing, Nina. So the article that I shared talks a lot about different kinds of hair loss, how you can figure out which ones are more likely thyroid related, biggest culprits behind that. So the thoughts are, one big thing is just having reasonable thyroid levels. So if your thyroid is too high or too low, that can make it to where the hair loss continues. And if you're really precise, it's a matter of less regrowth than it is of more loss. And that can look the same in the shower. You can still see a lot of extra hair in the shower, but the follicles aren't really maturing and developing, forming the keratin at the same time frame they would otherwise. So that's the big issue. And yeah, too much or too little can be a culprit for that. This is something to where, in my clinical experience, it's not usually a matter of subtle differences. So if someone, let's say that their free hormones are healthy enough, their TSH is 2.5, they might do better in terms of weight loss or energy if their TSH was 1.5, perhaps. But I rarely see a change like that make a difference for hair loss. So it's usually a bigger outlier for thyroid levels, usually off by bigger degrees. Danita, there are some people to where it's also a factor of T3 and T4. So I don't know if you're on a T4 only medication or if you're on one that has a combination, but sometimes switching to a combination makes a big difference. And that's even true, even if your levels look stable going into it. If all your blood work says you're fine, even T3 and T4, even if they look fine, some people do a lot better if they get both hormones rather than just T4. Probably the biggest single factor that I see, however, comes down to iron metabolism. And Danita, I did talk about that a fair amount in that blog. And I think I also linked that to another detailed blog about iron. So what happens is that when there's even a temporary break in the body's exposure to thyroid hormones, it changes your iron metabolism. It's not so much that it makes you anemic per se, but it makes you more sensitive to more subtle anemias. So if your body could do fine on, I'm going to make up numbers, let's say you need 10 parts of iron, and let's say that you could function fine as low as 7. Well, if your thyroid is off for a little bit, now maybe you can only function well if you're above 9. A minor deficit that wouldn't have affected you before could affect you now. And also, even apart from that, a big enough deficit can still cause symptoms. So some people, they're just really badly low in iron, and they would get these symptoms regardless of their thyroid. But others, their thyroid makes it to where they cannot tolerate even small fluctuations of their body's iron circulation. So that's a huge connection for many. And then the last big factor is going to be androgen exposure. So this is most common it's common for both genders, but guys are kind of stuck with it. Women, if they get too much testosterone, too much DHEA, there are some good workarounds and good ways to manage that. But iron's one of the largest single factors. Other thing to think about is dietary protein, adequate dietary protein. But yeah, please check deep into iron. Danita, one of our upcoming webinars will be all about iron metabolism. In the new supplement line, we have Easy Iron, and I'm super jazzed about that. I'll put the link up again in case you weren't aware of this, but here's where you can find these things. So Easy Iron, this is something that pretty much all these mixtures, I'm just blown away that they weren't done before because the data is so strong about them. So if you've ever tried using iron before, most people run into one or two roadblocks. Either they take it, it doesn't help, or they take more of it and it tears up their stomach. It makes them constipated or just miserable. So those are the most two common outcomes. And there's been a lot of data about solutions for that that's never been used in formulation before. So that's what Easy Iron is about. I think most people could do, if they're low in iron to typical degrees, they could do one pill once a day and very low chance of stomach irritation and see a great reversal in all things iron related like hair loss. So there's a few thoughts about that. Let's see. Thank you so much. We'll miss the URL, but we'll listen to the replay. So yeah, and Anne, I did post that URL there too. Emily, it wasn't just that, it was also low iodine diet. So this is back to nodules again. So Emily was saying how Boswellia helped her nodules. Also low iodine diet, yep, which is what the Thyroid Reset diet is all about. I've heard black cumin seed is good too. What do you think? Yeah, Emily. So exactly. There's also good data about black cumin seed, also called Nigella, and nodule reduction. That was one of the other ingredients in the nodule nodule control. So if you want the best blend of things all documented to reverse nodules, I put them all together there for you and put them in therapeutic doses as well. Let's see. Okay, so I also like to grab follow-up comments too. Thanks, Dr. C. I'll read the article. I'm on Armour. My meds get adjusted as needed when my levels aren't optimal. See a functional medicine doctor. I'm not a candidate for combining T3 with meds caused weight loss. Danita, so just a follow-up comment for you. You're getting T3. T3 is included in Armour Thyroid. Armour Thyroid is natural desiccated thyroid. That's porcine, pig-derived thyroid, and it contains T4, T3, and T2. They're all naturally occurring parts of that. The ratio of T3 to T4 in Armour Thyroid is about a 4-to-1 ratio. So to need a 1 grain dose of Armour, if you had your thyroid out, you're probably on more like a grain and a quarter or a grain and a half. In Armour, they would call that a 60 milligrams for 1 grain or 90 milligrams for a grain and a half. If I were a betting person, I'd bet you on about a grain and a half, about a 90 milligram dose. You can tell me how close I am. But a 60 milligram dose is roughly 38 micrograms of T4 and 9 micrograms of T3. So just so you know, you are taking T3 right now. And if you have done badly with T3 before as an isolate, there are many people that do well with it when it's in the context of natural thyroid like Armour, but there's some to where it bothers them in any context. So just want you to be informed, you are taking it. It's part of Armour. The other version of T3 would be a product like Cytomel or the generic leothyronine. That's a T3 isolate. So you're taking a natural combination that includes T3. Let's see, let me grab a few more follow-up comments. Peace and palm trees, what constitutes a thyroid disease? That's a question I don't think I've ever heard before. What exactly thyroid disease is a blanket term? Yeah, I guess almost everyone that comes to talk to me has thyroid disease. So quick answer to that one. So thyroid disease, 3 categories. The gland makes too much or too little hormone, the gland gets inflamed, or the gland grows in a bad way. So too much or too little, hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism. And the second one, inflammation of the thyroid. Most common thing there is autoimmune. Most common there is Hashimoto's. And most common result is hypothyroidism. Second most common is Graves' disease, which is the most common cause of hyperthyroidism. And then growth issues include nodules we've talked about, goiters, and thyroid cancers. So yeah, those are the main types of thyroid disease. Looking forward to tomorrow's webinar. Do I need to re-sign up if it was on last week's Zoom? I don't believe so. I honestly don't know, but I'm certain that if you did sign up on last week's Zoom, you should be getting emails announcing the details to you. I will actually talk to the team about that because that's something that I should know. Let me grab a pen. Sorry. Okay, here we go. I'm getting this on my action list. Check email. Okay, got that down. What will your next book be about? Can't wait. Thank you so much, Kelly. I'm jazzed about this. And of course, the publishers always want us to keep a certain amount of intrigue and suspense, but I've talked about this a little bit. The next one's going to be a full-on cookbook. So, some of the big persistent symptoms of things not being right with one's hormones and how you can use foods to help with that. So that's the basic idea. And it's really going to be about the foods. I'll talk a little bit about the symptoms, their solutions, why particular food ingredients help, but then it's going to be a cookbook. Because the thing I've heard the most from you all is like, where can I get more recipes? I like doing the metabolism reset, the adrenal reset, whatever else. And now I want more recipes for it. So this is my gift to you guys. There's a whole bunch more recipes. Kira and I have been spending a lot of time in the kitchen, and these are ones that I'm really, really proud of, and I think you're going to love as well. And they're going to help maintain all the guidelines of the various resets, but they're healthy, they're tasty, they're fast, they're easy, and there's some fun food facts you'll probably pick up along the way too. So that's the next one. We're looking at probably March or so of next year, but the publishing world's been delayed in a lot of ways. So I'll be finishing this one up in the next 1 or 2 months, and it'll be out sometime next year. We don't have a set date for it just yet. So related comments, I'll grab a few more of those and probably wrap up pretty quick. Is Easy Iron the same as the iron supplement you offered previously? Kathy, it's not. So before I made this one custom, the best version I could come across was iron bisglycinate, which is very good, but this one will have better absorption and lower rates of GI irritation and fewer pills, 1 pill rather than 6. So that's why it's easy. That's why it's Easy Iron. Emily, you're welcome. Happy to answer the questions. Let's grab one more here. Let me figure out what the last one will be. Oh, Danita. Okay, so I'm on 60 milligrams of Armor. I was on 75, but I had to get it reduced because of my thyroid levels. It's Cytomel I can't take because it caused weight loss. Yeah, so you would have no need for Cytomel. You're getting that in Armor. And just some quick context on things. So when you've had your thyroid removed, then a dose of thyroid is much more tied to body weight, and it's rather predictable for most people. So Armor Thyroid, 60 milligrams is also called 1 grain, and a 1 grain dose is typical replacement for, it's a little different for a woman who's menstruating versus a woman who's menopausal. Now, if a menopausal woman is on HRT, it's just like she's menstruating for these purposes. So a woman who has circulating estrogen. And in those cases, the dose that you need is largely tied to body weight. 100 pounds of body weight ends up being somewhere around the ballpark of a 60 milligram dose of Armor or a 1 grain dose of Armor. So if someone's had a thyroidectomy and they're totally stable on a 1 grain dose, they're probably rather petite, rather small, and that's all good. Yeah, the average adult needs a little bit more if they've had a full thyroidectomy. Link to sign up for Zoom. Yeah, Kathleen, let me make sure we get that out. And I'll get that on this chat for YouTube as well. I'll make sure all the platforms have that. Okay, so I saw one more detailed one I wanted to get if I could. Let's see. Sure, yeah, so Evelyn, I have Hashimoto's and I lost an ovary about a year ago due to a cyst. After the surgery, I'm wondering if the loss of the ovary could mess with my thyroid levels and cause these pains. It wasn't levothyroxine. Okay, on Armor now. So Evelyn, yeah, I grabbed that question because it was exactly in alignment with what I was just saying, how thyroid needs differ for women who has estrogen in her body and one who has less or one who does not. So yeah, as estrogen levels change from loss of an ovary, transition to menopause, change in hormones that a woman is taking, those can cause thyroid levels to shift. The general relationship is that estrogen makes the body need a little more thyroid hormone. And that's because it encourages the growth of a compound called thyroid binding globulin. That's a protein that inactivates thyroid hormone. So if a woman goes from into menopause, for example, and she's on thyroid treatment, she'll probably need less when she's in menopause. Or if a woman has an ovary removed, or if she stops taking hormone replacement therapy, her thyroid needs generally go down. That's the most typical relationship that happens. Now, a lot of times other factors can change your body's thyroid output or change your needs. That can be more significant, but just by itself, that's the relationship between estrogen and thyroid. Okay, so my voice is doing pretty good. Last week, I wanted to really spare it. This week, I'm feeling good about it, but I will still go easy because I'm going to do a lot of talking tomorrow night. I'm excited to do that and talk to you guys. I'll make sure we got links up for that. This is a free webinar. We'll talk about body weight, things to help with the body weight with thyroid disease and answers for that, and how the new supplements can be useful as part of it all. And yeah, so stay tuned. I'll just see you guys then. And I'll be back again next week. I'm planning for office hours again on Monday. All right, take great care. Bye-bye.